What's up, writers? Today we are going to have another episode of writing Dayton's Anointing and teaching how to write books as we do so. So you guys can all follow my lead, learn from my example, and then take the lessons that you've learned into your own writing. This way, we can all grow together. Now, last episode, last writing session, we wrote chapter 8. And in this chapter, we painted the picture of what is going to happen. This is a term known as foreshadowing. And we did it with several ways. We used an attention getter. This place is too dangerous. That place is too dangerous. And that was the whole theme of the chapter. We were foreshadowing that the journey that our main characters, Drayton and LaShawn, are going to go on is going to be dangerous. So their teachers are, well, one of their teachers doesn't want them to go. One is very accepting of that. LaShawn, the second most important character thus far, he is a bit nervous and he agrees with the one master that is afraid that there it is too dangerous. And then our main character, Drayton, is he doesn't care. He wants to go. It doesn't matter. Like that's why we have this line. You can stay if you want. I'm going. So we did a lot of little things like that. In writing, one of the big themes or one of the big things that will take your writing to the next level is you don't want to tell the audience everything. Like you don't want to just say how the characters are feeling. You don't want to just say what's going on. You want them to get the impression based on how you tell the story. Right? So I use dialogue a lot. Instead of me saying that the place is dangerous, I had the characters say that it's dangerous. Um, Instead of me saying that it's going to instill fear, you know, I have other ones, right? He says, maybe we should listen to Master Wiggins. So I have the characters saying a lot instead of me, the narrator, saying a lot. And we have the also the foreshadowing of some magical beasts which we will create. And most likely in this chapter. So I foreshadowed beasts several times throughout this book already. So I think it's the first time, I think it's about time that we introduce another magical beast. So this chapter, I thought a little bit about it. I brainstormed a little bit, and I think we're going to start off with them on their journey. One of the best things about writing is that you actually don't have to say everything. If you watch a show and if you analyze the books that you've already read, you'll notice that they skip time. There's always gaps, and then the scene that they're telling you fills in enough that you need to know. Like, we don't have all day. We can't write every little detail about this, especially because we're doing this in a more poetic way. I'm not going to be extremely descriptive as someone would be with a long fantasy novel where you have over 100,000 words to create this world and tell this story. I personally like when books get to the point. I like books that move, so that's how I'm writing. I want each chapter to be very fluid. I want it to be a book that I don't want to put down. I want it to be a book that's easy to get through. Hence why, if you notice, this chapter is only a page and a half. Chapter before it, another page and a half. Chapter for that, a page. This one, right? Almost 2 pages or page and a half. Page, 1 page, right? So I'm not writing incredibly long chapters, and that is by design. That is by preference. I want this to be an easy book to digest. So let's get started. I think we're going to start since LaShawn was nervous about going on the journey. I think we'll have a little more comedic relief in here. And we'll say, actually, you know what? Maybe should we start with them like getting hungry on their journey, something like that. Um, let's start with a thought instead. Command I for italics. My mouth is so dry. My mouth is so dry. My tongue is like a block of wood. Something like that. Do we indent something? Drayton. Uh, and we don't need italics anymore, so I'm gonna go back. Drayton, would you mind if we took a break? See, I'm glad you asked. I'm glad you brought it up. Or I'm glad you brought it up. I need some water. And then sounds like there's a river not too far from here. Probably a good place to get supplies. And stock up. We'll just say stock up. I won't say everything. Rest and stock up. Let's see. Let's see. Now, as I've said many a time, the original stories were first spoken. So, as we're writing this, I'm going to periodically read out loud, and I encourage you to do the same as you write because it needs to sound good out loud because that's how stories were told. And that's if you're going to do a reading somewhere, or if you want them to be read to, say, like children or anything, it's going to be pivotal that your work sounds good out loud and it helps with the editing process. So, reading out loud for me has been such a great help, and I highly recommend. So far, we have my mouth is so dry, my tongue is like a block of wood. Hey, Drayton, would you mind if we took a break? I'm glad you brought it up. I need some water. Sounds like there's a river not too far from here. Probably a good place to rest and stock up. And then I like to transition with alliteration often. So we'll say, unfortunately. Fortunately, when unfortunately, yeah, I'm not gonna say their names again. Unfortunately, when the duo arrived at the water's edge. Fortunately, when the duo arrived at the water's edge, they were not. Um, were not alone. There was a beast. I'm not going to say beast again because we've kind of used that word periodically throughout the book already. I'm going to use a different word for it. There's a creature lying in wait. For where there is water, where there is water, there are animals. To this creature, all but a few are food. All but a few double this food. Unfortunately, when the duo arrived at the water's edge, there was a creature lying in wait. For where there is water, there are animals. To this creature, all but a few double as food. I think we're just gonna. And to this creature, all but a few double as food. Unfortunately, when the duo arrived at the water's edge, they were not alone. There was something lying in wait. There was something, um, maybe not lying in wait. They were not alone. There was a creature. Let's see. What should we use? I want to say like maybe crouching out of sight. Um, hmm, like hiding in the bushes, in the foliage, something along the lines. I want to give a little bit more imagery, more than lying in wait, like waiting where. There was a creature. Um, there was a creature crouched in the foliage. Something like that. There's a. We'll use a little bit more alliteration. Yeah, there's a creature crouched in the foliage, waiting to strike. For where there is water, there are animals, and to this creature, all but a few double as food. All but a few double as food. Let's see. Next. Unfortunately, when the duo arrived at the water's edge, they were not alone. There was a creature crouched in the foliage, waiting to strike. For where there is water, there are animals, and to this creature, all but a few double as food. I don't know how many commas are actually supposed to go in that sentence, but that's where I naturally want to pause. So we will keep it there for now. All but a few double as food. To go down as uh, as many ounces. many ounces as their stomachs could hold. The two gulped down as many ounces as their stomachs could hold, unknown to the danger. Much as they could hold, unknowingly. That's definitely not unknowingly. Becoming a target for let's see. For the mysteries meal. The two gulped down as many ounces as their stomachs could hold, unknowingly becoming unknowingly unknowingly becoming a target for the mysteries meal. Concealed while concealing its presence. It inched closer. And now we're going to start to describe the creature. This is where some imagery will come in. One paw at a time. One paw at a time with claws. Butcher knife in length. Let's see. Unfortunately, when the duo arrived at the water's edge, they were not alone. There was a creature crouched in the foliage, waiting to strike. For where there is water, there are animals, and to this creature, all but a few double as food. The two gulped down as many ounces as their stomachs could hold, unknowingly becoming a target for the mystery's meal. While concealing its presence, it inched closer, one paw at a time, with claws, butcher knife in length. And then I think we'll do another, let's say, just when it began to salivate. Drayton stood up. I might make that the last. Or do we make just when it began to salivate? Drayton stood up. LaShawn, did you hear something? Just when it began to salivate, Drayton stood up. LaShawn, did you hear something? Um, Hmm. Just when it began to salivate, Drayton stood up. Sean, did you hear something? Maybe we'll end it there. I thought I heard something crack. I will say his senses. Uh, his senses. I won't say they were keen, because then maybe he would have said. Maybe he would have known that the attack was coming beforehand. We'll say heightened. Since his senses were heightened. Another side effect of his divine grace. The feline had not made a sound. Rather, it was his predatory aura. Rather, it was his predatory aura that uh, stood Drayton's um his senses were heightened. Another side effect of his divine grace. The feline had not made a sound. Rather, it was his predatory aura. Let's just say seeping into the atmosphere. Atmosphere. Rather, it was his predatory aura seeping into the atmosphere. All I hear, uh, all I heard was the crashing of the water. This river is pretty fierce. Fierce for a local vein. We're only how many days should we go? Local vein. We're only 3 days from the village. Drayton tried to relax. But he couldn't shake the feeling. That something was off. Drayton tried to relax, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Still, Drayton tried to relax, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. They still needed supplies. They still needed supplies. So he prioritized. What was certain. What was certain? Without sustenance. I'll have to look up exactly how to spell that. Without more sustenance, they were screwed. It would be weeks before they made it to the central dominance. It would be weeks before they made it to the central dominance that he needed to survive. He needed answers. And he needed to survive. I might not leave the whole he needed answers sentence. We shall see. I feel like I've said that enough throughout the session or the book, so there's not really a need to reiterate that he needed answers. I you want to make or when I write, one of the things I try to do is make it concise. I want to make it as few words as possible while telling the story. Without more sustenance, they were screwed. It would be weeks before they made it to the central dominance, and he had to survive. We'll say. Realizing that his prey was adopting a false sense of security. Mm. Realizing that his prey was adopting a false sense of security. The 20-foot feline bared its fangs. realizing that his prey was adopting a false sense of security, the 20-foot feline bared its fangs. It was time. Uh, Realizing that his prey was adopting a false sense of security, the 20-foot feline bared its fangs, only thinking about mm, the only thought in its mind. Uh, we'll say maybe bared its fangs. The only Realizing that his prey was adopting a false sense of security, the 20-foot feline bared its fangs, only thinking about how. Yeah, we'll say that. Something like that. Only thinking about its objective. Only thinking about its objective. About picking. Not picking, about indulging. Until there was nothing left but bones. Realizing that his prey was adopting a false sense of security, the 20-foot feline bared its fangs, only thinking about its objective, about indulging until there was nothing left, about indulging until there was nothing but bones. In one swift motion, it pounced. In one swift motion, it pounced. In one swift motion, it pounced. Pinning Drayton. Pinning Drayton to pinning Drayton to the Earth's crust. In one swift motion, it pounced, pinning Drayton to the Earth's crust. Uh, Maybe not. Um, Crack. Let's see. I'm not gonna use an F bomb as much as instinctively I kind of want to. But I'll use another one. I'll use another expletive for this one. It's not the most child friendly maybe, but it's the story. I don't believe in conforming necessarily 100% to what the reader wants. You have to make it your own. And this is how I would tell the story and how I would tell it. And then, I think my arm is broken. Uh, we'll say, indeed, it was. And Sean was paralyzed. Having never seen a beast this large. His legs. Having never seen a beast this large, his legs. His legs locked up. Locked up in fear. Having never seen a beast this large, his legs locked up in fear. I might not want to outright say fear. It's one of those things again where I want the audience to understand that he is afraid, but I don't necessarily think I have to directly say it. I might just say his legs locked up. His legs locked up. His heart rate. I'll say his heart raced with adrenaline. And then let's see. I do have to wrap this up relatively shortly. I mean, this is a good place for a cliffhanger. I think it just needs like one or two more sentences, maybe another paragraph, and then we can transition for the fight to continue, or at least have a break. And then I kind of want Wiggins to come in and save them. Um, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna do that this chapter or not. Realizing that his prey was adopting a false sense of security, the 20-foot feline bared its fangs, only thinking about its objective, about indulging until there was nothing but bones. In one swift motion, it pounced, pinning Drayton to the earth's crust. Crack. Shit, I think my arm is broken. Indeed it was. And LaShawn, yeah, indeed it was. And LaShawn was paralyzed. Having never seen a beast this large, his legs locked up. This large, his legs locked up. His heart raced with adrenaline. Um, his heart raced with adrenaline. Eyes. Uh, eyes darting at a Seizure's pace. In an attempt to find the best course of action. His heart raced with adrenaline, eyes darting at a Seizure's pace in an attempt to find the best course of action. If a decision wasn't made soon, his friend would lose his life. I think that is a good place to stop. And that is a cliffhanger. Another one. That is another cliffhanger right there. So we have in one swift motion, it pounced, pinning Drayton to the Earth's crust. Crack. Shit, I think my arm is broken. Indeed it was, and LaShawn was paralyzed. Having never seen a beast this large, his legs locked up. His heart raced with adrenaline, eyes darting at a Seizure's pace in an attempt to find the best course of action. If a decision wasn't made soon, his friend would lose his life. Yeah, I think that's a good cliffhanger. And then I think at the beginning of chapter 10, we will have Wiggins swoop in and save the day. And that will be our attention getter. We'll have Wiggins do some martial art move or some crazy action to save them. And then he'll scold them for not being prepared. And he'll be like, I told you this was dangerous and y'all didn't listen. So be sure to come back next episode so that we can finish out this scene and continue the story of Drayton's anointing and his journey to figure out what is going on with him, and will he be the catastrophe that ends the world, or will he be the savior that overturns the corrupt government and the laws of this land? But until next time, I do hope that all your writing is going well, and I hope that you all have a great day. I will see you writers next time.